We're pro.
Welcome to the
Audio's more of like thanks for green bar. The bars allow us to see your audio.
Yeah.
Hey, welcome back to Zack and I with your crazy wacky idea. How about we do a live stream today? How about that, Fox?
I think we should try it. I don't know if it'll work, but we should definitely give it a
We're
try.
kind of new at the concept of streaming. We kind of suck a little bit, but it's all right. We'll try it out. So, actually, today is a bit of a somber topic.
Yes, it is.
But yeah, it's 9/11. It's a very important day. It wasn't just some planes attacking two buildings. It wasn't someone doing something. This was a pivotal point in our history that helped shape the our nation and has caused or has driven the our foreign policy for the last 18 years. So it's a pretty important thing. Why don't we start off with just because I'm sure all of us have a story about how this event affected us. But Fox, how did you first hear about the Twin Towers being attacked?
So I was a little younger. I was in fourth grade, which that for those of you who are good at math in the audience tells you a lot. But they would not tell us. They didn't tell us what was going on during the day. And it was kind of pre-phone, so there wasn't any way of us getting news other than through teachers telling us, and they just didn't tell us. Which was something that a lot of us were upset about. Subsequent days and weeks after we had found out from our parents that night. And so I remember getting in the car. My mom came to pick me up, which I think there was something off about that because she came to pick me up early, and normally she had to work, and so she came to pick me up. I was like, oh, surprise, my mom's here. And we got in the car, and she told me something. I don't remember what the words were specifically, but it was, something along the lines of something happened. And I remember really distinctly. 'Cause I was sitting in the car. I remember really distinctly the seat that I was in. Playing with the seat handles, adjusting the chair and stuff like that, while she's telling me what's going on. And it was really being younger. It was kind of not difficult to understand, but it was kind of shocking. I hadn't really thought about anything on that scale before. And that was, I really distinctly remember the thing that was most confusing was why somebody didn't like us. I think it was a real sign of my innocence at the time that my mom explained to me, somebody that doesn't like America did this, and I couldn't conceive of why somebody wouldn't like America. And it really opened my eyes to kind of this, the whole, national everything, but really that, stuff's a lot more complicated than, kind of how I thought of stuff in my childhood. And it really seemed, again, it seemed weird. I'd grown up, obviously I grew up in America. I heard all this great stuff for, 11, 12 years at that point. And, all of a sudden I'm being told that, not only do people hate us, and they hate us because of how great we are, that they killed a bunch of people because they hated us so much. And it was, it was really eye-opening. Again, like I said, being younger, it was, I don't know, that's a real big wake-up call. I think there's a certain point where everybody, as kids, everybody kind of wakes up, but I certainly think that was my generation and younger. That was kind of how we awoke to this global community that we're a part of, for better or worse. It was, I definitely, like I said, I don't necessarily remember the words that she said, but I remember the feeling and the confusion, and very distinctly sitting in the chair and in the car and being uncomfortable while she told me.
Me, my experience was a little bit different. So where I was in the country, it was actually morning and I hadn't gone to school yet. And I had turned the TV on to, I forget why, and I don't think anyone told me there was something going on. But I had turned the TV on and I saw that instead of cartoons or TV shows, everything was the same channel. It was all news. And I saw the videos of the two towers being hit. And if I remember correctly, it was actually during the period before the second tower had been hit. So I actually was there for when that happened. Or it was just because that's my perception of the news coverage, right? So I'm a kid, right?
Yeah.
And I was in shock. Didn't understand. Didn't know how to react. My parents were in shock too. Single parent, was shocked as well and didn't know what to say about it. And when I got to school, it was really quiet. Everyone was already aware of it, teachers and students alike. And when they got us in the class, very few words were being spoken, and the teacher got up front and said, "Hey, something really important, something terrible has happened, and I'm sure you're all aware." And actually had a group discussion, talking about, how there are evil people in the world. And this is not a religious school. This is a public school. But just one teacher trying to help people understand that, not everyone is a good person, and try to help us understand that there are people out there that hate our entire way of living. And there's a lot of bad things we can say, a lot of tragedy, a lot of that we could talk about. The people jumping from towers because they didn't want to burn alive, and you were alive for quite a while on the way down. The people running. We can talk about the bravery of the people running into buildings that they know they're going to collapse or are likely to collapse. We could talk about the conspiracy theories of people who I think misguided or believe that this was something more than it was, thinking wasn't a terrorist attack, it was something else. But I think what I really would like to highlight, what was really the most important takeaway, though the bravery was important, though the tragedy was important for the day, was how there was, for a time, a great unity or at least a feeling of unity in the country. And that's because they didn't attack black people, white people, men or women. They weren't attacking the gays or the straights. They were attacking America because of America's way of life, our culture, our beliefs. They were attacking America. And for a time, the news coverage reflected that. It wasn't news coverage trying to divide us, to pit American against American. It was a message of unity coming from everyone, saying how we need to come together and help other Americans. And that's what we saw. We saw people of all race, belief, and creed and origin helping each other, and that is the unity that our nation needs to have. Also, thank you very much, Tetris Freak, for the 2 lemons.
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, I certainly remember that unity. It was, you remember the stories about, they sold out all the American flags everywhere the day after. But I do remember, you kind of get that feeling of camaraderie with. It was really unique. I certainly haven't felt it since, but you kind of see other people, and maybe if I'd been older, I'd been able to appreciate it more at the time. But you see other people, especially, me at school, but just kind of other people, other strangers, and there was kind of a camaraderie that we were all in it together that day. It wasn't, like you said, it wasn't identity groups. It wasn't trying to split us along. Identitarian lines. It was, we were Americans. Everybody was the same that day.
And the biggest reason for, I think, that sentiment, other than it being the natural reaction to us being attacked as a group, was because that was how it was being talked about. The media, the politicians were all echoing the same message of unity. And I think that you can see the stark difference between how the messaging was then compared to how it is now. We're still fighting wars 18 years later in the same part of the world that we went to war with then. We were all gung-ho to find revenge and defend the fallen, or avenge the fallen. When Bush said at Ground Zero that he heard the people, and that the people who perpetrated this attack would also be hearing us very soon. People who were excited, like, yes, we're gonna seek justice for this. They put out songs talking about how America is going to kick the terrorists in the ass, right?
Yeah,
we had a bunch of music came out, right?
Yep.
We had people were united, and I think the biggest difference was the media has so much power in building the sentiment of society. And when they push the importance of different identity groups, they push the difference between being in a black community versus a white community, being the women, the female community versus the male community. When they push these divisions as being important identity factors for you, above being American, they're dividing us. Whereas on the day of this event, they were pushing the identity of being American and us being attacked as a group and us responding as a group united. That messaging has a huge effect on the general perception of the society.
Yes, it does. And I don't know, maybe this isn't right to be thinking about now, but it scares me to think what would happen if there was a wide scale attack of some kind today. We see even on a small scale being dozens to 50 in a mass shooting, and we see what the media does with that today.
Yeah. Can you queue up that video for a little bit later?
The
chat.
Okay.
So I agree with you. They've divided us and they've weakened us. A divided society is a weak society, and that is the effect of them using their power to unite or to divide and using it to hurt us. I want to talk about a few things that to put things in perspective,
I got that
because like I said,
video.
we've been at war for those 18 years since September 11th, 2001. And during that time, according to Brown University, we've lost 147,000 DoD employees and military members in Afghanistan. We've
Say that
lost
number again.
147,000. We've
Really?
lost 65,000 in Pakistan, 268 to 295,000 in Iraq, and total of 507,000 killed total. Um,
Wow.
dress. This is direct killed in the United States. This is the direct deaths in major war zones, Afghanistan, Pakistan, between October 1st, 2001 and October 2018. And it's divided between U.S. military, DoD casualties, U.S. contractors, military and police, allied troops, civilians. Oh, sorry. I also include the opposition fighters. So if you take all the opposition fighters, that was 42. Wow, we've actually lost way more than they have, according to this graph. Let me show you the link
All right.
to do. My point being, we've lost a lot of people, allies and U.S. troops over in the wars. And so for Afghanistan, U.S. military alone was 2,401, but we also lost about 4,000 U.S. contractors and 58,000 national military and police. That's the nations. Then in Iraq, we lost 4,550 troops, zero in Pakistan. That's a lot of people, a lot of Americans, also a lot of our allies killed in those war zones.
Yeah.
Total deaths in total was 507,000, including enemy troops, which I'm totally fine with the enemy troops being dead.
Yeah.
Um, but that's the human cost since in the last 18 years. But to put that in perspective, um, the American deaths in the Civil War was 620,000, and that was a much smaller period. Um, but we did lose during the Revolutionary War. About 17,000 deaths were from fighting, and another 8,000, 12,000 died as prisoners. Um, so we lost relatively a small number of troops compared to other wars. But still, that's a lot of my brothers and sisters in arms. They're not coming home because of these wars. And what what have we gained,
Well, you got a
right?
whole it's a whole generation. I mean, in particular, it being 18 years, you will in very short order be having kids realistically who were born the day or the day after or the day before or the week after. They're gonna be shipping over there pretty soon. That's that's pretty incredible that even the world wars, that those didn't last generations. And this is now a generational war, which
Yep.
is it's incredible in the bad sense. It's incredibly terrible.
Yeah. A lot of those civilians, the national a lot of the civilians from those nations don't seem to be counted here. Or oh, no, sorry, yeah, so we get civilians. A lot of those civilians are killed by the enemy fighters too. I want to make sure we capture that. So the people are not better off, in my opinion, than they were in most cases than they were before we got there, but they have a lot more deaths, right?
Yeah.
Um, so again, what have we achieved here?
Yeah,
The country, are the allies that we had that we were fighting with, they're only allies because we're helping kill their enemies. They don't like us, and they would easily just fight us too. And we're allying ourselves with disjointed tribes that don't really have real power. A lot of the cases, we're trying to negotiate with the same terrorists that attacked us in the first place, the Taliban, right? For peace. The people that when we leave those countries, we're still going to be leaving it with enemies, and people who hate our way of life in power.
yeah, and it was we were just talking a little before stream. Right now, obviously, there's some other stuff going on with the Trump administration that I'm sure we'll talk about on Saturday. But not without getting into that, I know that there's Trump wants to get out of Afghanistan, and the counter argument to that is that if we pull out of Afghanistan now, it's going to completely collapse back into what it was in August 2001, and that's incredible. That again, in the bad sense, that after 18 years, it's still so fragile that it's the moment we pull out, it'll collapse back 18 years of progress.
So here's the reason why.
Which
And
makes me think that there was no progress at all. But
exactly. Here's the reason why. So a democracy is dependent on a culture that supports and a people that support democracy. A democracy does not exist just because of the government being in place that fits the mold of a democracy, right?
It's more than a piece of paper.
Right. So the Constitution and the American way of governing did not wasn't developed by a group of people working in a room who just decided to make a government this way. It was made by ideas. It was a country that had these principles and these values constructed the ideas that built the government. So you cannot have this democracy or republic like we have without first the culture and the values. So you try to force it on a people who have values that are not compatible, that government will never function.
Almost 180 degrees in the wrong direction.
Exactly. So if you want them to eventually to be compatible with the style of government, what you'd want to do is to help their culture to develop first. And you can do that through exchange of information and through cultural exchange, where they are exposed to our way of life and they can choose as a society whether or not they like the benefits of our culture or not, and they can evolve on their own. They actually had in Iran a movement towards that when they had leaders and the people who liked the Western way of life. That was turned around by some religious zealots who took control of the country, but they were moving in the right direction. They kind of showed how being exposed to our culture can allow a society to develop. The idea of regime change, the military strategy of regime change that's been employed by the United States government and military, has been an objective failure. We have a lot of historical examples of us trying to do regime change, and it has been less successful than us simply having economic and military relationships willingly with other countries.
Well, and throughout the years here, obviously this is defined a large portion of my academic life. Certainly, I was curious. I looked into some of the history on it, and some of the history that I looked into earlier on versus what I look into what we're currently doing. It gets confusing, and the reason why it gets confusing is you see a lot of the same names, but sometimes they're on different sides of the ledger. Sometimes they're the enemy, and sometimes they're supposedly the allies. And if you look deeper in history for the last 30, 40 years in that region, it's the same story. And those regime changes, it's not just about who you're changing it from, but who are you changing it to. And maybe it's a little bit too broad. Maybe it's too hot of a take, but it seems that for the last several decades, the regime changes in that part of the world have always been, well, this group was oppressing that group, and then they didn't like it, so they rose up, and then they took power, and then now they're going to oppress the other group, and then I remember when your grandpa oppressed my grandpa, and then they rise up again and they switch over. And so the regime change is just which flavor of oppression are we going to get this time? It's never a regime change into, hey, let's have a capitalist republic and see what happens. It's always like, well, I think the burqa should be worn this way, or I don't think that these people should be driving, or let's maybe this group wants to throw that group off the roofs of the buildings or whatever. It's really, I don't know what the solution to it is, and obviously nobody else in the American government has figured that out in the last 18 years either. So I guess I'm in good company. But there is. It's something about the culture. It's something about the people in that culture. And so I don't know what the solution is, but regime change into another bad culture, just a different flavor of it. That's not worth this price in blood that we've got up here on the screen right now.
And we end up helping out. So in the case of Syria, we pick some tribes that want to use us to kill their enemies. They don't like us either. In fact, they and their enemies equally hate us and the Russians. They want us out, but they're willing to work with us just as tools to try to gain power, right? So in the end, no matter who wins, we lose, right? And then in the case of Iraq, in the case of Iraq, we support this new government leader and these new troops, and we give them all these training, all these weapons, and all these vehicles. But in the end, when the moment comes when they can try to take over, ISIS is formed from the same troops that we armed and trained.
And
they walk away.
They're using your weaponry against you too.
And the training as well. So it didn't matter who we support. They don't really support us, and there's going to be no democracy coming from it because they don't support democracy. What they support is power, and we might end up supporting, say, the Sunnis or the Shias. We pick one group, and we're just joining this many centuries long feud between two versions of the same religion, right? One of them is fighting because they believe that the religious leader is supposed to follow the birthright from Muhammad, and the other one was a religious leader who was elected, and they believe that's the true religious leader, right?
Yeah, it was a disagreement as to whose brother was the leader like 1,000 years ago. It's really dumb.
So they're still fighting today, and us getting in the middle of that, we're not going to solve that philosophical question for them, that cultural question, that cultural motive. We are not going to be able to change that. They need to change that. And us being there, all we're doing is being used as a tool to fight for power, and in the end, just giving up our blood and treasure for no personal gain. Right?
Yeah. So
now,
go ahead.
There's another way of doing this. I mean, so I know the biggest argument is I'm not like an isolationist, right? But I am very careful in how I'm willing to spend the lives of our sons and daughters and fathers and mothers. I'm not flippant about the cost of war. It is very expensive, and it has to be for a really good purpose. And usually that is for the defense of our nation or an ally whose defense of that ally is also deeply involved in defending this nation. So I understand that they say, well, the reason why we are fighting this part of the world is because we want to expand our sphere of influence. However, fighting in war is not the only way to do that. And so it's really important to have us military bases around the world so we can respond to, crises anywhere in the world. An example of how we've done this without having to have continued conflict is Qatar. Qatar wants us there. They pay us money to have a base there and troops there and planes and tanks and all and missile installations because they know if we leave, their country is gone, right? So they want us to have a sphere of influence in that area, so they support us being there, and they're friendly to us. We can have allies that we have military bases in their countries because they want us there, because they know that America is big and strong. We not only do we bring military protection and security, but we also bring, we help improve their economies. In return, we're not in a war zone, but we do get the ability to have a place for our tankers to go, so we can fly around the entire planet because we have fuel and tankers, or we can do reconnaissance to be able to survey our enemies and make sure they're not putting missiles along the borders of our allies.
And so
We
there's an
can't.
exchange of value there that is utterly lacking
Right.
with Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq. There's not the exchange of valuable allyship. Being a good ally. It's just not non-existent. And then that's not to mention the absolutely absurd terms of engagement that they gave, where they want you over there projecting a sphere of influence, but God forbid you're allowed to shoot back.
Yeah, so I support Trump completely in wanting to get out because, like I said, that we're gaining nothing. We shouldn't have been there from the first place, and I'm fine with the place collapsing because it's going to happen regardless when we leave, and it's just how much blood and treasure are we willing to spend before that happens, right? So the rules of engagement there have been terrible for the U.S. military. They've jailed and they've punished a lot of American soldiers for fighting a war, and because of these stupid rules of engagement. Either let us fight the war or don't, right? But the enemy, they know what our rules of engagement were, that we can't fight, we can't shoot in the direction of civilians when civilians are working with the enemy and are putting themselves as human shields, right? So they are also the enemy, but just because they're not carrying a gun, they're being used as a human shield. So we have terrorists firing rifles from rooftops with women and children sitting there as the shields because they don't care about their kids at all. And then our troops can't fire back, so we're supposed to sit there and be just take the shots, be pin cushions. And if they dare defend their own lives or the lives of their troops, they can be put in jail. Or there's a great example. There was a lieutenant. I believe it was a lieutenant. He was with a team of Army guys, and there was a motorcyclist coming at high speed, and it was called out by a sniper that this was happening. They couldn't see it directly, but the lieutenant gave the order to the sniper to take the shot and stop the motorcyclist before it got to the front of their column of troops, dismounted troops. Only a little while earlier, like we're talking like a month or so earlier, the same scenario. Motorcyclist coming at high speed up to U.S. troops, and as soon as he got up to the troops, he exploded and killed a bunch of troops. So in the wake of that happening, even though the rules of engagement say that if you don't see a gun, then not to shoot, he gave the order and had the guy shot. Finds out later that he was a terrorist and he was armed, and he went to jail because of that. And this is one of many examples of a soldier doing the right thing, killing a known terrorist who was armed, and even though he was armed, because the lieutenant didn't know he was armed at the time, the military and justice system at the time put him in jail.
And so, that gets back into kind of the theme that we got, and I'll eventually get us pulled back into 9/11. But they want us over there again because if we're not over there, everything collapses again. What the hell you guys been doing for not you, but like you guys, the American government, what we've been doing for 18 years. We're have extremely ineffective policy that has resulted in a lot of deaths of like you said, your brothers and sisters, American citizens, who were told that they were signing up to, liberate, to help save these people from themselves. And one of the biggest lessons we've learned in the last 18 years is that they have no interest in saving themselves. They, certainly, again, it's been a whole generation for us, but it's been a whole generation for them. They've had a whole generation born and brought through power, and they still are doing the exact same thing that their parents did 18 years ago. And so, I don't know what would happen if we pulled out, but I know for sure what's going to happen if we stay in. And I know a lot of people are upset about some of the things that Trump's done recently, especially the little peace summit that he was planning, which I got some interesting, confused opinions on that as well. But regardless, in general, the methodology and thought process the last 18 years, that can't continue for another 18 years, because it's gonna have the exact same result that it did the last 18 years.
So Trump would like to. The whole reason why the negotiations have been going on with the Taliban, and why he wants to meet with them, is because the U.S. Government wants to get out, but wants to get out with the facade of it being a victory, right? And the way they've been trying to go about that is they're trying to get the Taliban to just sign a piece of paper and not shoot at us for a little bit, and then we'll say, hey, look, they signed this agreement that they're going to govern in a non-terroristic way. They're not going to attack Americans. They're not going to attack our allies, and they're going to
it certainly sounds like a Neville Chamberlain peace in our time. But
exactly. It's going to be this grand agreement where they agree to all these great things. They're going to stop killing people. They're going to stop subjugating their own populace, and they're not going to attack us again. And they don't actually care whether or not they really do that. They just want them to agree to that, sign a piece of paper, have a little bit of a press release, and then we can leave on with the facade of having had a victory, right? The problem is the Taliban are just so fucking dumb. They know we're telling them we're gonna leave. You can do whatever the fuck you want to do. Just sign this paper and smile, and don't shoot at us for like a month. That's all you gotta do. Then we gone,
and
right?
They can't hold back for a day.
they can't hold back for a day. They keep saying, okay, yeah, we'll agree to that. We'll agree to that. And then like the last minute, right before signing, they're like, but you'll only agree to it if you also admit to war crimes and arrest like 4,000 of your soldiers and put them in jail for life. No.
Oh, is that where that's led to now? I didn't hear that update.
Yeah, no, they keep coming up with ridiculous requirements to be part of the contract or the peace agreement. Ridiculous things like putting a bunch of American soldiers in foreign jails or our own jails in some cases, or admitting to horrible war crimes and the president taking personal responsibility.
Jesus
right? Stuff that's not going to happen. And they're like, okay, we got to start over again. And the people that they're negotiating with actually have no power to stop the fighting, right? This is just political theater. And they're so dumb to realize that they could get rid of us like in a month if they just sign the damn paper and not shoot at us for a little bit. But so that's what the motive is behind the whole Trump meeting with the Taliban thing. I disagree with it because I don't like political theater. I know that it's like required for most like people, the general populace, like to feel good about it, right?
I don't know. Who's the political theater for? I think a lot of people just want to get out. We don't care if it's a win or a loss. I think everybody knows what it is, and then we all know Trump doesn't give a damn, and Trump supporters don't give a damn what the international community thinks of us. They can go to hell.
Yeah.
I don't know what the point of the political theater is.
I think that the UK should probably focus on their own country for a bit and not worry about fighting foreign wars that don't really affect them that much.
What UK? they've
Sorry.
I think they've devoted to dissolve themselves. I'm sure I'll write up an article and we'll get into that on Saturday.
Sorry, I mean the Islamic State of the UK as part of the UN.
Well, let's use that to segue into. We just talked a lot about kind of the cultural problems and what those have resulted in the last 18 years for that part of the world. Maybe we can talk a little bit about the cultural changes that America's had the last 18 years.
Actually, yes. I got a few changes for you.
All right, let's hear them.
So, since the 2001. September 11th, our population has grown by 40 million Americans. Has it felt like we've gained 40 million more people? Jeez Louise. But with that growth,
That's a lot. Yeah, no, well, yeah, you could go ahead. I'll say it after.
With that growth, our economy, mostly thanks to Trump, maybe a
Ah,
little bit thanks to the last part of Obama's, not because of Obama's policy, just in spite of him. At the end of his last term, the gross domestic product has improved drastically. Unemployment rates have gone down, mostly during just Trump's presidency, but a little bit towards the end of Obama's. The real medium household income has improved a lot. That's the, you know, even though there was a recession, not only have we got back what we lost, there's been a huge rebound. America economically is doing really well right now.
we've also increased the national debt by $15 trillion.
That's the downside, a
Um,
definite downside.
actually, I think 16, 17, $17 trillion actually. Sorry, my bad. Um, we also the last 18 years have seen not just a rise in economic prosperity, but part of the reason that drove that was just technology. We've had a just
Did I
a
just ear rape
really
everybody? What happened?
what's that? What's that?
So Slowpoke's saying that I ear raped somebody. Da,
Um,
da,
You should.
da.
I figured Slowpoke would be into that. You should toss us. You should toss us $2 for the effort that he went through for that Slowpoke. It was just for you. Anyways, um, the yeah. So part of that, actually, a lot of that economic prosperity is due to a real technological revolution. We were just on the cusp of it. Just the internet was just brand new in 2001, September 11th, 2001. And since then we've had a lot of really wild innovation. One of the things that strikes me is all the footage from 9/11 is filmed in 480p. And that was HD back then. I mean, nobody really had TVs that went higher than that. There wasn't a reason to because nobody had signals for that. People were still using VHSs. CDs were new. And we've look where we've come. Everybody's got a supercomputer in your pocket now. 1080p is the lowest res file you can get now. That's 4 times more than what they were filming 9/11 with. We've had just really incredible technology spring up, and almost all of that has been pretty exclusively driven by American innovation, American companies. And we've really the last 18 years, we've probably increased technology more so than what they did the previous 300. And we did all of that after this attack. We're going to keep going through some of the culture, but we've got a great economy now. We've got some issues with the economy, some debt, but we've also prevailed. We've innovated, and we've continued kind of being the leaders of humanity that we were before this, and we've continued that tradition after this happened. And I think that really speaks to American resilience.
Yeah, it does. Um, a side note, did you know that the U.S. has become more ethnically diverse in the last 18 years by a large percentage?
That's
It's
good.
gone from we used to be back in 2001 we were 69% white and non-Hispanic, and now we're at 60%. It looks like the greatest increase was in not Hispanic, not Asian, and not Black.
What race is that?
Any group that's not those things. It doesn't actually say what the other group is.
Huh.
It says other.
Yeah, well, maybe
And
we got a
Hispanic
lot
is going up.
probably got a lot of. It's funny hearing demographics anymore because Tim Pool always makes the joke. He's biracial. Which groups he fit in, and I'm biracial as well. And it sounds cringy to even say it like that, but it's something that I don't think. I think your mainstream American thinks about race a lot less than what they might have in 2001. Obviously, we've got the fringes that are intensely focused on it at every second of the day. But that hasn't. There's still something wrong about that, right? Like the general public perceptions, there's still something not quite right about this identitarian movement. It hasn't gotten all the way into the culture yet. It's there. It's trying to. But we haven't fully adopted that as an American ideal yet.
So
That's
CC in the chat there is saying that demographics are important, and I think that they are as important as we make them. As much as value as you put into your skin color is, and how much you think it is important, is how important it will be in society. But I have this drastic idea. Just hear me out. Maybe being white or black or Asian does not actually mean anything about your character or how intelligent or how good or bad of a person you are. Maybe it has little to do with how much someone is in or your community or how much you depend on them and they depend on you. Maybe the identity that we should put value in, stock in our society is our our country, being an American. Because I think that being an American, says more about the cultural ideals from which you live in than your skin color. Because you could be someone who's black who lives in, say, a community that values intelligence and values hard work and values meritocracy and individualism. Just like you could be white or Asian. You could also be any of those same races living in a society that values, not hard work. Values using your power to enforce your ideals upon other people. You could believe in communism, I guess. You could. It doesn't matter what your skin color is or where you come from. What doesn't at least doesn't matter. What it doesn't mean anything about you as a person. What matters about you is what ideas you believe in.
absolutely.
I know it's a radical idea, but
it is. That's pretty. Man, you're gonna end up on the wall for that one. But I think this format kind of lends to that. We've got a little Direwolf community here. You didn't know what I was for a long time. We didn't know what you were. We don't know a lot of people in the community. The racial makeup wasn't important. We found each other with goofy little avatars, and we found each other through a set of shared beliefs and cultural idealisms. I think that kind of I hope that this is a microcosm. Our little community here is a microcosm for how America will be moving on in the future, where it's more about that the sharing the ideals and the culture, and less about the what you look like.
Yeah, you know what? You know where genetics really does matter is when you have a really small gene pool. That actually does matter.
Well, I didn't say we needed to breed. Jesus.
No, that's sorry. I was just because some people make the argument of, well, I mean, there are clearly if you have bad genes, you're gonna be, you could be dumb or something. You could be retarded. Well, yeah, I mean, if you can have a gene pool that's really small and you end up with people who are less likely to be intelligent, but that's not what we're talking about here.
Yeah, we're not,
also,
no eugenics discussions, please.
No, definitely not.
Breed out the libtards.
No, but Shit Meme Big Post saying that that was a very edgy opinion of mine.
Yes, very. I was to talk to you about that afterwards. I don't know if I can keep streaming with you.
Yeah.
How dare you? How dare you not be focused on my skin color?
Hucky Puck says, breed out the libtards.
Yeah.
So here's my philosophy on it. I think this is a pretty reasonable strategy. If you're going to have kids, that's what you want to do in life. And I did want to have kids. I do. That's why I have two. Might have more. I don't only pick someone that I liked and loved and could get along with. I also picked someone who was healthy and would likely be able to have good kids. And I know that sounds like not romantic, right? But any kids we have, I have to raise. I would like the best possibility of them being healthy. And even if they're not healthy, if they have problems, I'm going to love them and take care of them just the same. But why would I not think about having someone who's going to be able to produce good kids, good healthy kids? I mean,
Yeah.
Why would that not be something I'd factor in?
Absolutely. I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. So we kind of went through a little bit of what our stories were. We went into some of what happened over there the last 18 years, a little bit of what happened over here, which sure we probably go into well, I guess the discussion of what happened over here is every other stream that we do. So, we could do that one to death about a lot of the cultural changes here, which that's kind of the theme of the rest of Direwolf streams. Is there anything else you think's pertinent to talk about, or something that I got a little graphic up here that says "Never Forget." Maybe something focused or related to that.
I have something I want to talk about. Yes.
All right.
It really, really annoyed me. I know this is just a tweet, but freaking hell. The Trump put out a great tweet, and at least as being a good photo op of him saying "Never forget," and he has a picture of, I believe they're looking over the Ground Zero, right?
I'll pull it up here.
Showing their back, showing them looking out over a ledge towards what I believe is the where Ground Zero is, and it's a unifying message. And don't forget, and some crazy person, and not only one, a lot of crazy people took that photo, and because they're so used to Orange Man bad, everything he possibly says or does is always racist and bad. They tried to take that picture and say this shows he's turning his back on the American people. Like, how are you so mentally retarded that even something so positive as a message in that one tweet, you could twist it into somehow being an Orange Man bad? And, God damn, even if you dislike someone, if you think someone's wrong about one thing, it doesn't mean that everything they do is also evil.
Yeah, a lot of the people that think, Trump probably didn't design this like photo shoot, right? Like,
oh,
somebody probably did that for him. And while I will concede that Trump does love to make things all about him, it's not all the time. He's not with. Well, he kind of is without class sometimes. He's not always without class, especially on the important stuff. We'll go with that. But even if he's not, just because he does something or he's taking a picture, I mean, this is just a picture. It's just a picture. It could be anything you want it to be. And it's I believe I responded back to one of them with something to the effect that this is a Rorschach test. Maybe if you think this is Trump making 9/11 all about him, maybe that's how you look at yourself. Maybe you think, oh, I would do that. That makes sense that Trump would do that. It's kind of it's a little bit psychotic to be paranoid that Trump's trying to take over 9/11. It says something about these people, and they're not able to turn it off. And that kind of goes into a comment I said a little bit ago that I'd be, for a multitude of reasons, I'd be really concerned about some kind of attack happening today, because I've seen how the media handles the smaller attacks, and smaller attacks being very lethal mass shootings in the 20s, 30s, and 50s. I've seen the way that they've handled and presented that. You see Trump anytime Trump speaks to those or offers condolences or discusses it, or he takes a picture like this, remembering an American tragedy. You got this group of people who got to make it about them. That it's look how woke I am. Look how woke I am that I can, even during this tragedy, I can't even turn it off. I'm so woke that I'm going to be upset about Trump remembering 9/11 instead of actually remembering 9/11. It's far more important to tweet out Orange Man bad and that Trump is making 9/11 all about him rather than actually remembering what the fuck happened that day. We've got and to that extent, you've got the populists doing that. Certain groups of the populists, but it's something that's driven by the mainstream media. There was another tweet that we will be really deep diving into on Saturday from the New York Times today. That they deleted it. It was not live for long, but it said that it was 18 years ago today that two airplanes took aim at the World Trade Center.
They weren't airplanes.
Yeah, the airplanes all by themselves. Yeah, the airplanes all by themselves made the decision that they were going to go hit those. They took aim. It was the airplanes, not the people inside. That's what the New York Times reported. And they've certainly forgotten, and that's amazing that the paper of record headquartered blocks away from that. They can't even say it, because we've gotten so they've gotten so politically correct, and they've got a small cadre of people in the populace who are trying to get that to be a part of our culture. And I think the never forget what our culture was back on 9/12/2001, back in that unity message. And we've got 18 years later, even on the day of the quote unquote paper of record. I love saying that ironically, because they sure love saying it, and they take themselves seriously, but it's really ironic now. They completely forgot what happened that day. It's been reduced down to, I think there was an airplane crash, right? There was some airplanes crash. Is that what happened? That's pretty much what they've reduced it to. They've totally forgot what it was. They forgot that our culture came under attack by a culture that hates everything about our culture. They forgot that completely. And then you've got, like we were just talking about, you get people upset at Trump remembering 9/11. Trump's, I would guarantee you Trump remembers that. I bet you he remembers it, in the visceral way. He remembers what he was feeling. I can almost guarantee you that. He was obviously a New Yorker, a very, very important place to him. And he did his time trying to do what he could to help out in the aftermath. And I believe wholeheartedly that he has not forgotten, and that anybody going to say otherwise, I just don't know where your head's at, and I just don't know where the New York Times is at with describing it as some kind of plane crash ambiguously.
I want to make a quick comment about Flight 93, because I think this shows something about Americans and American culture, and the warrior-like, tough mentality that I would really like us to stick to, rather than toward what the Regressive left is trying to move us towards, the soy boy mentality, where they actually demonize individualism and being able to take care of yourself. Yeah. In any case, the Flight 93. They heard from phone calls to their families that three other planes, had already crashed into the Twin Towers and the Pentagon. And the terrorists on board had a bomb or a fake bomb, and they had box cutters. And they'd gotten everyone on the plane into the back of the plane in one group, and were telling them if they tried to do anything, that the one guy that was watching them was going to blow them up. And when they heard that basically they're on a suicide mission, that they had, they're going to die regardless, they went and they fought for the plane, and either the plane was forced in the ground by one of the terrorists or they forced in the ground. Either way, they decided to fight, and they, even though it was probably way bloodier, way harder, way more violent, they chose to do that because it meant they would save other Americans on the ground. That is honorable.
Yeah. And I'm sure there was some disputes in some of the other planes. You wish that there'd been more, but certainly they did their part. We had a discussion about a month ago about the 9/11 Victims Fund finally getting funded through Forever, which was wonderful. But you made the point that one of the reasons why it's right to take care of the first responders that day was they were essentially soldiers that day, and I think that's kind of the same thing with the people on Flight 93. They kind of, for not by choice, they got conscripted into the Army that day. They were the front line, and they fought, and unfortunately they were, they sacrificed themselves to save other Americans. That's about as frontline as it gets.
Yeah. And really, in the end, that's the soldier mentality. On the battlefield, doesn't matter if you die if you are doing your job to save other lives. Yeah, um, some pieces get taken in chess. It's how it works. Um, but important, it's imperative that you win in the end, right? Um, as much as you want to stay alive, uh, victory for the entire team is more important. You got to defend the base because even if you die, but you defended the base and the base survives, and that's a victory. But if you don't give up, then you all die, right? And so, yeah, it was a sacrifice to save lives. They were on the front line, and you know what? There was a time um, when I think the average American man was uh, something that people around the world were like, "Wow, that's a tough society." But what my wife referred to us as um, being a warlike race, but what she meant was like our country. She didn't mean it that way, but she meant
Yeah.
that she saw from her vantage point was that we were all tough men in America. We were all strong men, not men that were violent, tough. There's being strong, but also being under control. She saw us as being honorable and powerful people who were all basically soldiers that would fight for what was good, right? Because in her perspective, her country, Americans had helped them in multiple wars and provided aid for a long time. So all she ever saw was soldiers from America, right? Um, but that's what I'd like. We are a society of people who believed in being self-reliant, into being uh, de dependent on ourselves and being willing to fight for our country. That's what I miss. I want to encourage in our society, rather than what the far left right now wants is a bunch of people who are
Gimme,
dependent on the
gimme, gimme,
state.
gimme, gimme. Everybody,
Yeah,
I'm entitled to all this stuff. Give me free stuff. That's the people on Flight 93 weren't entitled to anything.
no,
The people in the towers weren't. The first responders weren't. They had they were presented circumstances and they overcame them. And that's one of the things that we had in September 11th, 2001, and that I think is one of the things that's eroded the last 18 years. That's one of the things that we didn't prevail with, unfortunately. Maybe we can revive it. I hope we can. But it certainly is on the it's being attacked right now.
Ship Meme Post says that if you're prepared, people call you crazy. Then a hurricane hits. Yeah, absolutely. There's nothing wrong with being prepared. In fact, I think that every man should know how to do, the basic outdoorsy style skills, and every family should have emergency resources and rations, generators, water. And you should have your own firearm if you can own one legally. You need to be able to take care of yourself. And the thing is, if you have a society of people who are able to take care of themselves, they can also take care of each other much more easily, right? Um, so when in Houston there was the flood, and a lot of people were in dire straits. Ha ha. People people went there with boats, food, water, gasoline, and supplies, and they were able to do so because they had those things. They had the skills to go do search and rescue, even though they're just average people who weren't a part of any kind of search and rescue like bureaucracy, right? We had people going around in little trolling boats that they use for fishing, right? Um, and they were helping people out, and because they were prepared, right? We need more people that are industrious and able to do things like that.
Yeah, it's kind of the flip side of the prosperity that we've had. Certainly the last 100 years in America, but certainly in the last 18, as I described some of the economic and technological advances that we've had. Kind of the other side of that sword is complacency, laziness, for lack of a better term. It's everything's very easy now, and
Yeah.
people people forgotten how to do hard things?
It's crazy how many times I've been driving and I come across someone who's in a ditch or run out of gas or has something broken on their car, and because I have a toolkit, a tow strap, and several other things in my car, I've been able to help them out, right? I also had came across. Okay, this kills me. This guy, I was driving a 19 hours drive, right? A little bit of sleep in between, and I come across in the middle of the night at a gas station this guy in a huge brand new truck, beautiful brand new truck. And I was at the gas station about to leave, and this guy pulls into this gas station in the middle of nowhere with this beautiful truck with a flat tire.
Oh no.
And I told my wife, I actually said this out loud, he'll be fine. He can change his tire. I didn't think it was weird that he drove on the flat tire. But whatever, he'll be fine. And then I pause, and this little Asian dude gets out of the car, like he'll be fine, no worries. But I still was doubting myself. I didn't want to leave if this guy was stuck. We're the only ones at the gas station, right? And he stares at his flat tire like it's a piece of art for a while. And I'm like, honey, I'm sorry, but I think this guy's needs some help. She's like, don't do it. It's like, come on. What would you want someone to do for you, right?
She knew what she was getting into with you, I'm sure.
Yeah. So I go out and I go up to the guy, and he's like still staring, like rubbing his head now, like he just doesn't know what he's looking at. I said, "Hey, sir, do you know how to change your tire? Do you need any help?" He's like, he did barely spoke in English, but I got from him, yeah, he needed help. I said, "Okay, do you have a spare?" He's like, "I don't have a spare." And I looked under his car. He says, "Actually, you do. It comes with the vehicle." He's like, "Oh, I have a spare?" And he's like, I said, "Yeah, yes, you do. It comes with the vehicle. Like, tell this is new, so I'd be really surprised if you didn't have a spare tire. Where are your tools at? Where's your wrench? Where's your jack?" And he's like, "Where's Jack?" Like, oh God. The tools to raise the car up. And he's like, "I don't have that." I says, "No, it comes in the car. It's somewhere in your car."
Mind blown.
Could you just tell me where the compartment is? And he made me search his vehicle, basically. By the way, it was full of stuff because he was going somewhere. So I had to take his stuff out of his car, which is packed with full of boxes and stuff, to find his stuff. And eventually I ended up changing the tire for him. Hey, babe. We're not done. We're almost done. I'm telling a humorous story. 1 second.
No, that's our stream timer, Alpha B. So.
Okay, either just a little bit, baby. Love you.
Oh, thanks, Dyer.
No worries. It's fine. It's fine. In any case, I didn't change the tire for him, but what really was getting at me is this was an adult male who didn't know how to change a tire and also didn't know his car came with a tire and a jack and a wrench.
Yeah, so it's not just some of those survival skills; it's some of the basic skills too, and that comes along with that technology, that very comfortable society. It's I don't want to go back, but there's some things that didn't make they haven't made the journey through time with us, and some of that's got to do with the technology and the prosperity that we've got. And I think that's been a recurring theme throughout history, is the prosperity that kind of leads to a weaker society at some rate. Hopefully our ideals and culture can carry us through that.
Yeah. So hopefully we learn from this, from 9/11, what the lessons that were taught to us. Is kind of closing for me. I hope there's two things we learn from this. First, we can look back on and reflect on the unity our nation felt then, and see how that is better than the division we are currently suffering. Maybe we can see how much being united as Americans was more important than being whatever race you are. And second, I hope we learn from 18 years of fruitless warfare and the cost of blood and treasure to stop doing this.
Yes. I could not agree more. Focus on defense, less on offense.
Strong borders, maybe actually vetting the people coming into our country so they don't, fly planes into our buildings.
Oh wow, that's man, it's a really hot take, Dyer. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that one. I
don't
agree.
know.
I agree. I do want to. I know we're running short on time here, so I'll just put the plug in.
All I'm saying is she walked out in here naked. I kind of get the point that she wants me to go.
Oh, so yeah, so she wasn't telling you that you had to go. She was encouraging you to make the choice yourself. I encourage you guys to check out a documentary on Netflix called "Out of the Clear Blue Sky." There was about 2,900 people lost in the trade centers that day, and about 700 of them were from a single company, Cantor Fitzgerald. And this is the story of that company. Obviously, it was an American tragedy, but this wiped out an entire company. And it was only a few of the execs and a few of the random employees that were, they were just out of the building that day. And this the story of what they did in the aftermath, because they lost 700 employees, but they had 700 families left with a void in their life. This is a story of how they tried to do what they could in the aftermath to take care of those families. And it's a really it's one of the stories I hadn't heard before. But it's certainly one of those important kind of forgotten stories that day. There's a lot of little stories that day, and I encourage you guys to check that out. It's called Out of the Clear Blue Sky, and I believe it is still on Netflix. But definitely check that out.
Hey, two things. Before we close, can we do that video that was posted earlier? And also, I told people that we have a new animation for the Ninjet and Ninjagini I put in.
Oh, well, they have to give a donation for the stuff then, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Let's show it off.
We'll play this video real quick here. Yeah, I remember grade school we'd sing this.
Also, thank you for the ice cream, Timberwolf and Chipmune Bang Post. Hey, Mr. Taliban.
Hey, Mr. Taliban, hand over Bin Laden. Daylight come.
That guy got one between the eyes. And they got dumped in the ocean because they want to have a place that become like a pilgrimage.
The Afghan women are all in a rush. Daylight come and we bomb your home to shave their fannies 'cause they don't like Bush. Daylight come and we bomb your home, and the Cornish SAS broke down Debenhams door.
I can't hear it.
I'm not sure about it. Sorry. It was really funny. You missed it. So, all right. Well, thank you guys for joining us this evening. Not our. However you remember, certainly don't forget. And ooh, check that out. That is a man. I don't. What is going on there? Oh, that's a crashing jet. That's not a bomber. You said that was a bomber.
Yeah, I didn't get time.
That's a kamikaze bomber. That's not a. Oh, jeez. All right. Well, thank you for the. We got a ninja and it just crashes immediately. That's so fun. That's not even somebody sending it. That's just Dyer just spamming them. Make somebody send one. All right, Dyer owes us a ninja. All right.
Oh, sorry, I gave you one, but it crashed.
So, but yes, thank you guys for joining us. We will not be streaming tomorrow, but I do encourage you to watch Crowder's live stream of the DNC debate. I'm sure that'll be a hoot. I'm also watching that. It's just why we're not streaming tomorrow. But we will be back on Saturday with another Dyer News weekly news week. Dyer, you want to say that? I screwed that one up.
Can you remove the picture of the Twin Towers? The plane is like crashing into
Oh
it.
my
over
God!
again?
No! What have you done, Dyer? What did you do? How could you?
That was not well thought out.
Damn it, Dyer! Dyer, no! Cut the stream.
Oh my
cut the
God.
stream. How could you do that?
That's horrible.
Dyer, no. No.
Thank you.
All right. Well,
Jeez,
we might be back on Saturday. I don't know now. Jesus Christ.
Oh my God.
Oh my God, Dyer. Okay. Alrighty. I think we should just.
All right.
end it.
Thank you guys for watching. You guys. Oh, Saturday, right?
Yeah. Goodbye.
Terrible.
Trivia.